Across 17 star systems, the Valkyrie were admired as one of the galaxy's most delicate species. Their translucent, crystal-like wings shimmered like living glass, beautiful yet fragile and deeply sensitive to pain. On their homeworld, they were treasured, but on the chaotic, crowded learning hub of Station Kepler 442, delicacy wasn't respected. It was exploited. For 3 long months, a young Valkyrie named Zereth endured the same nightmare every single morning. She would arrive at the academy wing early, hoping that blending into the corner might make her invisible. Her wings folded tightly against her back, she tried to take up as little space as possible. But it never worked. The corridor was always full of students from dozens of species, Kryn with armored exoskeletons, Thraxians with too many limbs to count, and the Drool, thick-skinned and notoriously aggressive. One of them, Jerry, had singled her out. His size alone could intimidate almost anyone, and backed by his laughing companions, he had turned Zer into his personal morning ritual. "Morning, little moth," he would rumble, and before she could react, his enormous hand would clamp onto the edge of her wing. The pain was instant, sharp, electric, overwhelming. Valkyrie wings were wired directly to their nervous systems. A crack or twist wasn't just an injury, it was agony. Jerry never tore the wing fully. He always damaged it just enough to make it hurt. Spiderweb fractures spread across the delicate membrane as Zer gasped, tears streaming down her face. And around them, dozens of students walked by, pretending not to see. No one stepped in. No one intervened. Every day ended the same. Zer huddled against the wall, holding her damaged wing, wondering how much longer she could last. By the time evening came, her wing would regenerate. It always did. Valkyrie biology healed fast. But the fear didn't heal. The humiliation didn't heal. And the loneliness certainly didn't heal. After 3 months of suffering, Zer started to question whether coming here was a mistake. The academy was supposed to be her future, her dream, but instead it felt like a prison where every morning began with pain. But then, one ordinary morning, everything changed with a single voice. A voice she had never heard before. A voice that didn't belong to any alien species she knew. A human. Zereth looked up through blurred vision and saw someone standing over her, someone unfamiliar. A human student new to the station. Humans were still newcomers to the galactic community, unpredictable, strange, sometimes feared, sometimes admired. And this one, she looked different. Her dark hair was tied back in a no-nonsense ponytail, her posture steady, and her forward-facing eyes, predator eyes, were locked onto Zer with a level of focus that made her flinch. "Are you okay?" the human asked softly. Zer automatically answered the way she always did. I'll heal." But the human only shook her head. "That's not what I asked." The girl crouched down, lowering herself to eye level, something almost no species did for Valkyrie, who were considered too delicate to approach so closely. The human's presence was grounding, unsettling, and strangely comforting all at once. "I'm Andrea," she introduced herself. "I transferred here last week, and I've been watching." Zer froze. If she had been watching, then she already knew that being close to Zer came with consequences. "Then you should stay away from me," Zer whispered bitterly. "I'm not worth the trouble." "Who decides that?" Andrea fired back, jaw tightening. "Those oversized lizards who think hurting someone smaller makes them strong? On my world we have a saying, all that is necessary for evil to win, is for good people to do nothing." Zer blinked. "Your world sounds violent." "Oh, it absolutely is," Andrea said with a grim, humorless smile. "Humans spent thousands of years perfecting the art of breaking each other. Doesn't mean we're proud of it, but it does mean we learned when to fight." She stood and offered her hand, an invitation, a promise. Zer hesitated. No one had ever reached out to her like this. No one had ever stood up for her. But something in Andrea's expression wasn't pity, it was conviction. Zer took her hand. "Come on," Andrea said. "Let's get you to class." For the first time in months, Zer walked through the corridor without feeling entirely alone. And though she didn't know it yet, Andrea wasn't just offering kindness. She was preparing for war. The next morning, Zer woke with the familiar dread twisting inside her. Her wing had healed, smooth, whole, shimmering. But healing didn't erase fear. Jerry was always waiting. He always smiled. He always hurt her. As she approached the corridor, she saw him standing in the usual place, arms crossed, grin already forming. Her heart dropped. But then Zer's gaze shifted. Leaning against the opposite wall, arms folded, eyes sharp and alert, was Andrea. When their eyes met, the human gave a tiny nod, like they had already made a silent agreement. Jerry didn't notice her at first. He stepped forward with his usual sneer. "There's the little moth," he growled. "Ready for your morning?" His hand moved, but it never reached Zer. In the span of a heartbeat, Andrea launched forward. She intercepted his wrist mid-swing, twisted it with precise, practiced force, and used his own momentum to slam him headfirst into the wall. The entire corridor echoed with the impact. Gasps echoed from every direction. Andrea smiled sweetly. "Sorry?" "Reflexes." Predator species thing. The drool students froze. Fun fact, Andrea continued conversationally, humans evolved to chase things for hours until they collapsed. Pursue predators. Isn't that neat? The air grew cold. Jire's friend stepped forward, intending to swarm her, but Andrea had already shifted her stance. Balanced, centered, ready. Another human stepped up beside her. Jeremy, broad-shouldered and calm, like someone who'd been waiting for this moment. I wouldn't, he said quietly. Humans have been fighting things bigger than us since we lived in caves. We're surprisingly good at it. One drool lunged. He never even touched them. Andrea sidestepped, drove an elbow into his torso and dropped him gasping. Jeremy flipped another cleanly onto the ground. In seconds, the fight was over. The watching students froze. No one had ever seen humans move like that. Andrea stepped between Zur and Jire, her voice turning cold. Here's how this works now. You don't touch her. You don't look at her. You don't even think about her. Jire staggered back, shaken. Because if you do, Andrea continued softly, you're going to learn exactly what a few thousand years of human combat evolution feels like. And for the first time, Jire believed her. Jire sputtered, reaching for the last excuse he had left. The academy, they'll punish you. They'll. Andrea's smile was all teeth. For what? Defending someone? Go ahead. Report me. She stepped closer, her voice a quiet threat. But every single morning after that, I'll still be here. Humans don't quit. Ever. Jeremy nodded. It's kind of our whole thing. Jire, bloodied and humiliated, withdrew. His friends followed, shaken to their cores. The corridor slowly filled with whispers, awed, stunned, disbelieving. Zur-Eth stood trembling, not from pain this time, but from something else. Confusion. Relief. Hope. Why? She whispered. Why would you fight for me? Andrea looked at her like the answer was obvious. Because someone should have done it 3 months ago. And because where I'm from, we watch each other's backs. Jeremy added, besides, there's one thing humans really can't stand. Bullies, Andrea finished. Word of the incident didn't just spread, it exploded. Kepler 442 housed dozens of species, but none reacted quite like the humans. Overnight, they became a topic of hushed conversations. Their stubbornness, their protectiveness, their fierce refusal to tolerate cruelty, it stood out in a galaxy where most species had learned to look away. Zur walked through the station the following day with her wings fully extended for the first time, catching the corridor lights and shimmering beautifully. No one dared touch her. No one dared even approach her. And leaning against the same wall, just like before, was Andrea, calm, casual, present. She wasn't there because Zur needed defending anymore. She was there because this was what humans did. They showed up. They stood up. And they didn't back down, ever. Across the galaxy, a quiet truth began spreading. Humans weren't the strongest. They weren't the most advanced. They weren't the largest or the fastest or the most impressive. But they were the most stubborn. And sometimes, stubbornness was more powerful than strength. Zur's life had been 3 months of silent suffering, 3 months of pain no one dared acknowledge. But all it took was one morning, one interruption in the cycle of cruelty, to change her fate forever. Andrea didn't see Zur as fragile or weak. She saw someone who had been abandoned by a world too afraid to get involved. And humans weren't built to walk away from injustice. Kepler 442 learned fast. Zur's wings, once cracked daily, now remained untouched, glowing and whole. Students moved aside for her, not out of fear but out of newfound respect, or maybe guilt for all the mornings they had looked the other way. The drool avoided her entirely, their confidence shattered. Even Jire kept his distance, unable to forget the sound of his skull hitting the wall. Yet Andrea didn't act like a hero. She didn't brag. She didn't lecture. Every morning she simply stood there, leaning against the same wall, giving Zur the small nod that had quietly become their routine. Zur wasn't afraid anymore. With Andrea here, she walked differently, shoulders back, wings lifted, head high. She had never realized how beautiful her wings were until she wasn't hiding them. And Andrea? She never claimed ownership, never demanded gratitude. To her, helping was just normal. An instinct, a reflex. Across the galaxy, species had long believed humans unpredictable, chaotic, too emotional, too loud, too reckless. But now they began to learn something deeper. Humans did not tolerate injustice. Humans defended the vulnerable. Humans didn't need to be asked. And humans, perhaps more than any other species, knew how to stand their ground. In a universe where the strong dominated the weak, humanity's greatest power wasn't technology or biology. It was their refusal to back down. Zur thought about all the mornings she had endured alone, and how it had taken just one human to make sure it would never happen again. Her wings had been broken every day for 3 months. But now, thanks to Andrea, they rose again, unshattered, glowing in the light. One human didn't just protect her. She restored her spirit. And in a school filled with countless species, one truth became unforgettable. Sometimes the fiercest weapon in the galaxy is a human who decides enough is enough.